So, hi guys, thank you so much for joining us for today's podcast, which I'm extremely excited about because the company behind this particular story is incredible. They've been on a blazing their trail around all the different things that are exciting about Africa's startup scene, and more specifically, our very exciting fintech space. Flutterwave, as you may have heard, in the last couple of weeks, announced a major fundraising round where they came up with about $200 million that they're using to expand their business, both geographically and in terms of the various value propositions they have. And I got the great opportunity today to have as my guest Omosalewa Adeyemi, the Senior Vice President of Market Penetration and Partnerships at Flutterwave. She basically is leading their push across the planet. She's working with all sorts of fintechs and other particular stakeholders. And again, products in over 20 countries like in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the US. And prior to Flutterwave, she actually was a healthcare consultant with an educational background in business administration. Thank you so much for joining us today, Omosalewa.
Thank you for having me here, Moses. Feel free to call me O if that's easier or less of a mouthful.
Well, I'll do my best. I know that at least the Adeyemi is very familiar. I've encountered that name many times when I was in Nigeria, over the years, but the first one is a bit new to me. So yeah, we'll keep it straight up. So great. Again, maybe you can give us a little bit of background around, your professional and personal background. How did you get here? How did you get into this incredibly exciting, vibrant, and fast-growing fintech business?
Sure thing, absolutely. As you can tell from my name, I am Nigerian, born and raised in Nigeria, immigrated to the US in my teenage years, studied business administration in undergrad, after which I worked in healthcare consulting. At the time, I was very passionate about healthcare and learning about healthcare administration and kind of why we in the US have a decently functioning healthcare system. And my ultimate goal was to see what knowledge and what systems that I can learn in the US and bring back home to improve our healthcare system. So from the coming to the US, I'd always been very interested in doing something back at home. I was in healthcare for about 3 years and kind of realized, I don't think this is for me anymore. I'm a little bit bored. I'm kind of doing the same things over and over, and I'm not one to thrive in that type of environment. At the same time, I wasn't exactly clear what the next thing I wanted to do was. And like every African child or every African immigrant, it sounded like the best time to go back to school. So I enrolled in a 2-year MBA program, and it was during my time in the MBA program that I got introduced into the world of fintech. I sat in a fintech seminar at the Media Lab in MIT, where we invited several fintech founders to come talk about what they're doing in the space. And that kind of made me realize that the challenges that the fintech industry was solving are challenges that I deal with on the daily, whether that's me needing to send money home to someone, or whether that's someone from home reaching out to help pay their Apple Music subscription or help order something from Amazon. And so I was really intrigued by the industry. I knew I would like to work in fintech. I knew I wanted to work in fintech facing an emerging market, preferably Africa, because I am African. I also knew I wasn't quite ready to move back to Africa right after grad school. And did my search. There was just one company at the time that fit the bill. Reached out very cold from the website, and 4.5 years later, here I am.
If I'm hearing you correctly, what you're telling is that basically you pursued this opportunity, you saw a potential fit, and you thought to yourself, I need to get to this space, and Flutterwave became the vehicle that created that opportunity, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Brilliant, fantastic. So when you think about Flutterwave and rather understanding the inspiration behind the business, I mean, ultimately, what has been the journey to date? Where has it come from? Where's it going? And obviously the inspiration that sparked, and I think you've alluded to this already, but, what's been the journey and, what is the ultimate inspiration behind the business idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So Flutterwave in many ways is the brainchild of our founder and CEO, GB. He's worked in the financial industry or the financial services industry in Africa across several markets. And through his experiences, he became aware of the challenge of digital payments in Africa, the challenge of trading and being able to move money to cover the trade. And that's kind of what led to his inspiration to wanting to build Flutterwave. I think a big part of the reason we've gotten here today is because from day one, both GB and the early Flutterwave team have always been clear on one thing, and that was it's challenging to pay electronically or to pay digitally or receive digital payments in Africa. We need to build a solution for this. We need to build it from an infrastructure perspective. And that's what we've been doing. Today, we've managed to connect about 20 countries in Africa onto our infrastructure. This means that we can provide the ability to individuals and businesses to either accept or send from digital payment types using our platform, regardless of the country, regardless of the currency across 20 markets, regardless of the payment types as well, whether it's a card payment, a mobile money payment, a USSD payment, it doesn't matter. We cover all of it, and we cover all of it on one platform.
So I see your business, based on what I've managed to research and understand, I think has two elements to it, right? There seems to be an aspect of B2B where I think you work directly with merchants. You also work with, service providers who integrate on behalf of them. And then it seems that you also have a consumer range of products as well. Could you delve a little bit into some of that to give us a sense of, the universe of payment solutions that you actually offer as Flutterwave?
Yes, absolutely. So in our early days, we wanted to focus on building the infrastructure, building the groundwork that could power payment products. And so once we were able to do that successfully, it naturally made sense that we would build a product that would cater to businesses. First and foremost, that was our focus. Now, if we're truly passionate about solving the problem of digital payments in Africa, we can't just approach it from one direction. It's very important that we think about solutions for all parties that are involved in transactions. Businesses pay businesses, individuals pay businesses, businesses pay individuals. And so the reason why we have B2B offerings as well as retail offerings today is so that we can leverage the infrastructure that we've built, put products that cater to these segments on top of that, in hopes of creating an ecosystem of fully functional products that help alleviate the challenge of I'm a merchant in South Africa, I have a customer in Tanzania, they're unable to pay me.
So really looking at it in a very holistic way across the board, ultimately.
Yes.
Excellent. As we continue, I don't know whether this would be the question answered maybe by Foyne. I think, the business has received a lot of interest, obviously a lot of attention recently. And I think one of the big questions is that people are just, I think, recently stunned by the amount of money that you raised. And I think the big burning question is almost like, what do the investors see in Flutterwave? What is drawing them to this opportunity? And how big is this problem? Because it would suggest that this kind of investment means that the rollout and the ambition must be pretty significant to obtain such large amounts of funding. So maybe you can give us some insights, Coin, from that perspective as to what is the appeal or the attraction of the business that is Flutterwave from an investor perspective. So I guess maybe the next question I'll ask you is more around, how did Flutterwave achieve such impressive results from inception to date? It seems almost like within a blink of an eye that you've gone from, zero to this incredible, rate of growth and attention. I mean, what do you think some of the key ingredients are to this impressive results within a relatively short period of time?
That's a very good question. I think first and foremost is having a clearly defined vision and mission, and having everyone be aligned to that North Star. From day one, I remember when we were a much smaller team, and also to a certain extent now, if you picked up the phone and you called anybody that worked at the company and you said, "What are you guys trying to do?" you would get an answer that was pretty similar across the board, right? So nobody was confused about what we were trying to do. We knew there was a problem. We knew we wanted to solve it. We knew how we wanted to solve it. The second key ingredient, I will say, is actually having people on board who are committed to solving the problem that you've been able to clearly articulate and clearly define. And so when it came time for us to spread our wings outside of Nigeria, we didn't really have to struggle too much to get people on board, because if the premise has been to solve the problem of digital payments on the African continent, when we say it's time to go to South Africa or we say it's time to go to Kenya, it's all hands on deck trying to figure out how does digital payments work in these markets that we're trying to target. How can we leverage our technology? How can we leverage our expertise? How can we leverage relationships that we've built with financial institutions in our existing markets to help us have a solid grasp of the new markets that we're going to? The third thing is just having supportive clients and partners. I think all of those things mixed together contributes, and also investors, which Coin is going to address in a minute. Having all of those things together really just put us on the path to success. And with all of those things in play, it was really up to us. It was really up to the dedication of the people that we had on the team to make it a reality.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. Coin, I think you're back now. So I have actually a couple of questions for you. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I think the first question for me, obviously, is, the investor appetite that the business seems to be attracting, and not just in a trivial way, but rather in a very significant way. The kind of, resources that were raised recently, $200 million, valuing the business at about, north of, $3 billion US, is kind of almost unheard of for a startup in Africa. And for me, this is, one of the underpinning reasons behind this conversation. And I just want to understand, what are the desirables? What are the things that investors see in Flutterwave that gives them the confidence and the appetite to invest so much? And what, how big an opportunity potentially is the business solving? Because, that kind of investment suggests a massive push going forward. But more importantly, I'd just like to understand from an investment management standpoint, what does that mean and how does that come about?
Perfect. Thank you for having us on the call today, Moses. I think as Flutterwave, and as also mentioned, right, how we've grown, the type of journey we built. When we started our business, we were at the forefront of building a cohesive payment ecosystem, right, that would enable ease of commerce, growth of business, expansion opportunities, connect Africa to the global economy. Before we started the company, it was more like Africa was on its own, and even Africa being on its own, it was still highly fragmented across all the 54 countries on the continent. So when we started to build our story and we started to build that, that pipeline of payment systems, of, financial connections across different markets, we became a leader in that space. Today, anyone that is looking to do payments would choose to work with a Flutterwave and build that infrastructure by themselves or one country at a time. that is the benefit we've been able to provide to customers. And this is what investors are seeing, right? Given the pipeline that we've created, right? So the value of that pipeline has made Flutterwave to a large extent very systemic to a lot of the countries or a lot of the markets in which we operate. And I think that that's one strong thing that investors appreciate about us, and I guess makes them keep coming back to Flutterwave to help support our journey and our scale.
That's excellent. Another question I have for you, probably from an investment standpoint, and for me, it kind of obviously, I'm sure there's strategic things you cannot share, but I'm just curious in terms of understanding, with all this investment, where is the business going next? What are the, whatever you are comfortable disclosing in terms of the next steps? I'd just like to maybe get a hint or an idea of what that looks like going forward.
Yeah, I mean, how we're looking at it is the world next. We've been able to cover all of Africa. We've done pretty well in terms of helping businesses grow, helping businesses scale. Now we want to do that in other emerging markets. We want to do that in other developed markets. So we want to build a value chain opportunity across multiple verticals. So if you're thinking travel, you're thinking events, you're thinking holidays, and you're thinking about payments and how it has to do with that, you're also synonymizing that with Flutterwave. So that's those are a couple of things that we're looking at as a company. How we've started putting together plans, and we started implementing those plans as well. So 2022 is going to be an exciting year for us.
That's awesome. I'm reminded of an interview many years ago by the famous Egyptian billionaire. I think his name is Naguib Sawiris. It was a really interesting interview that stuck with me. And he said at the time that, people presume that Africa is the recipient of innovation. But I think what you're saying here is that Africa is actually a source of innovation increasingly. And the fact that we can actually take to the world the latest and best technologies to solve the world's problems. This is what I'm hearing you say about Flutterwave.
Exactly.
Excellent. As we continue, I would like to ask almost some more questions. I know that, again, when we look at the fintech space across Africa, it feels like there's so many companies playing in this space. There's a lot of, I suppose in that sense, a bit of fragmentation. Everyone is sort of trying to get the African opportunity, whether it's remittances, whether it's cross-border payments, whether it's the emergence of crypto as yet another asset class that people are exploring. And I'm just curious to kind of understand, maybe from that point of view for our listeners here, what do you think it is that makes, Flutterwave somewhat unique or different? Because even in Kenya, we have quite a few people in the payment spaces, some who are operating on a Pan-African basis as well. But, it would just be interesting to understand, it almost feels like the trajectory of Flutterwave seems somewhat unique or possibly exponential, in the sense that whatever you're doing seems to have much more momentum and seems to be attracting much more investment. Are there some principles or some underlying reasons why, what makes you different from the other organizations that are trying to pursue the same opportunities?
Yes, so I think perhaps the first thing is our technology. The way that we've approached solving the problem of digital payments on the African continent is from an infrastructure perspective, as opposed to just having products that tackle a problem. And the difference that makes is that it puts us in a position where we ourselves can and are on the way to becoming the groundwork for moving payments across the continent. So if you think about building a house, right, you need to lay down the plumbing of the house in order to be able to have water come out of the faucet and put into your glass. Many players in the fintech space are focused on building that faucet and making sure that faucet works well. For us, we're interested in doing that, but even more importantly, we're interested in laying down the pipes in the house that will actually carry the water to the faucets. I know that's kind of a strange analogy, but pardon me, that was the best way that I could describe it. The second thing,
I completely get it. It's just almost like saying that, the internet is the infrastructure, and then what you do on top of it, becomes the other stuff. So you're saying you're tackling the infrastructure below and the stuff, the value addition that goes on top as well. Exactly.
The second thing is also our coverage. Yes, we know that there are other Pan-African players in the space, but today we actually do have the largest coverage across countries in Africa as well as across payment types. And it's not just about coverage, really. It's about how seamless you're able to expose that coverage to your customers. How easy is it for your customer to come, sign up for your product, and truly be able to connect to 90 payment types across the continent without having to go through complexities in contracting, complexities in integration, complexities in operations. I think that that's something that we've gotten really good at figuring out and building over the last 5 years. I would say those are our two biggest differentiators. I don't know, Coin, if you'd like to add anything.
I think you've covered it all very well.
Great. A couple more questions. Do you have any, and this question could go to either of you, do you have any, when you look at the next 2 to 5 years, where do you see Flutterwave going forward?
I can take a first stab, and I'm sure Connie also has a lot to add from her perspective. So we started out wanting to solve the problem of digital payments. We've made strides in doing that. Over the next 2 to 5 years, we really want to branch out to see how can we drive more digital transactions across the continent. I don't know if you were able to watch our first, I don't even know what to call it, our first event where we kind of introduced the company and some of the initiatives we've been working on just last week. I think it was on Friday. But there we announced some of the things that we're working on, right? Like Flutterwave Grow, where we help businesses register a company, allowing them to become a formal entity, thereby making it easier for us to get them on board with our financial institution partners, making it easy for us to be able to acquire their transactions. Once we have that data on our platform, it becomes easier for us to offer them loan products through Flutterwave Capital, which is also a new initiative that we're rolling out. That capital allows them to scale their business. So for us, we want to go from being just, we allow you to send and receive payments, into actually building an ecosystem that supports the growth and development of SMEs across Africa. I know you said something earlier about a quote from a previous interview where it's like innovation lies in Africa. That is absolutely true. It is up to us Africans to figure out how can we mine that innovation, how can we build solutions that help people build innovations and help them scale it and help them thrive and change the narrative about our continent from the continent that needs to receive to the continent that gives, builds, and develops its own.
Fantastic. I love that. I really do believe that, this is a golden moment where Africa can kind of turn the tide and be the source of goodness, as it were, for the rest of the world. I don't know, Coin, if you have anything to add from that point of view.
Yeah, so, over the next 2 to 5 years, and you can imagine that we get asked this question quite often, right? We still see ourselves, similar to what O has mentioned, as being that plumbing for payments, right? So what that would mean, and if you take a look at the evolution of companies like Alibaba and Stripe and Square and, Adyen, right? They keep, one thing that they all have in common is finding ways to keep embedding themselves within the day-to-day activities or consumers of businesses, right? So I think that is something that we're going to continue to remain true to form with, specifically for our business as well, in addition to what O mentioned.
Maybe the last question, which can be a bit of a bundled question. I was going to ask if you have any, insights that you'd like to share from the journey, the highs and lows of what it's taken to get here, any of the key learnings that you've had, and then any words of wisdom that you might have for, aspiring startups and innovators in Africa who obviously look to Flutterwave as a model or a guiding light of what is actually possible. I'd love you, both of you to share maybe your perspectives on those two things.
I think advice to startups, fintechs that are trying to build across the continent is pay attention to the team you're building. Your team is very important, especially if you have dreams of scaling. At some point, it's going to be impossible for the core members or the founding members to be in every conversation. And so you really have to make sure that you have a world-class team that can appropriately represent you, but also spot opportunities, even when they're not the most clear opportunities for you to pursue.
Great, thank you for that. Coin, anything to add from your point of view?
Yeah, so one thing that I think GB always credits to the success of Flutterwave is the fact that he's built a team from ground up. And if you take a look at the people on the call today, myself, and Wendy, we have been at Flutterwave more at least at a minimum 2 years, right? I've been at the company 4.5 years, and that's just a true testament to believing in the vision and the mission of what Flutterwave is looking to achieve and what Flutterwave is growing. So for new fintechs that are out there, just aligning with what O has mentioned, making sure that you have the right team in place that is keyed into the vision that you have for your business and can help you achieve that. And of course, it's always very important to have the right partnerships, right? At Flutterwave, we believe that payments is about partnerships and working together, especially with the hundreds of partners that we work with, from FIs to telecoms, regulators, and all of these stakeholders, right? We believe that any business that is also looking to start now, don't think of yourself as being on the journey alone. Find the right partnership, align yourself to the right type of partner, and that would help spur the growth, whether that is in form of advice, whether that's in form of revenue. It would be a much easier journey to undertake as a founder or as a business owner.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. It's been awesome. I really, really loved hearing your insights and sharing with us on the Pure Digital Passion podcast. We really are cheering you on. We see you as an inspiration in terms of what is possible, and the fact that the boundaries that we have are probably self-enforced, and there are incredible opportunities going forward. So all the best to Flutterwave and yourselves, and we're looking forward to seeing exciting things going forward.
Thank you so much.